Welcome back to Investment 360. We're joined now by Martin Orji. He's the Managing Director at Nex Rubica in London. Martin, thanks very much for joining us. We're focusing on your active portfolio with your African exposure this evening, and just looking at your country split: Egypt, Kenya, Mauritius, Morocco and Nigeria. Of course, everybody talking about Nigeria and the hotspot. Do you believe that Nigeria is the biggest place to be from I know it's the biggest economy, but the biggest place to be from an investment opportunity perspective?
Yes, it's one of the biggest sort of potentials, I would say, in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa. I think it is obviously sort of enjoying some of what's happening in North Africa, where investors are sort of reallocating their assets into Nigerian resources, Nigerian consumer staple sectors.
Martin, when you look at the Africa continent, from your perspective, are there lots of options? In other words, your fund is invested obviously in different countries. How difficult is it for you to find and to trade in counters to sufficient value? Is there a liquidity problem within Africa that you're still struggling with?
That's a very good question. I mean, the first thing we did in putting together the fund was look at the liquidity spots. Essentially, those countries that have markets that can absorb enough sort of inflow on a daily basis, and that whittles it down to quite a few countries. Not much. I mean, as you said, Nigeria, Egypt, Kenya, Morocco, and Mauritius.
You mentioned Morocco, and just looking at your exposure there, some 42%. So this is a big bet in your Africa exposure. Yes,
that represents more of our active approach, where it's a big bet, but in the short term. And another reason that we're looking at that, the key driver there is a lot of the not just the consumer staples, but the sort of the material sector, with the mining companies over there. And in the last, the last half of 2011, they were the spots that we focused on, and they were the spots that drove our performance of the market, our outperformance of the market.
Martin, when you look at the individual stocks, do you tend to play specific sectors? In other words, do you say, well, I quite like the mining theme or commodities, or I like the oil theme, or I'm looking for consumers? Do you play specific sectors within Africa? Is that possible? Or is it that you really got to look at stock by stock level and do more of a valuation type investment?
You have to come at it with sort of a blend of the fundamentals, or from a macro to sort of a fundamental approach, stock by stock. But yes, we do that. I mean, we focus first on the theme that's happening in Africa in terms of materials, industrials, consumer staples, and within that we then focus on a universe of about 100 stocks that we feel have the return performance and have the proven return performance. And not just that, but also able to then look at the fundamentals behind these companies, and if they're going to be able to sort of sustain growth in their respective countries.
A number of these markets are very illiquid, Martin. How do you overcome that challenge when investing on the continent?
Yes, one of the key things we've done is have an approach to being able to tap into multiple countries at the same time. With being able to trade into these illiquid markets, I mean, the 4 or 5 countries we focus on are the most liquid countries in Africa. We do look at sort of more frontier markets in Africa that have less liquidity. But the key issue with liquidity is cost. And you know, the more liquid, the more expensive it is for us to sort of enter into the market. Now we've been able to tackle that in a variety of ways, including providing a hedging product that allows us to sort of, in a sense, outsource the risk, the liquidity risk in these countries. And that is essentially also the market risk and the FX risk of being able to exit on time in these frontier markets.
Martin, how much at the moment, given the current environment globally, how much appetite is there for investments into Africa, specifically in the equity space? Are you struggling to find investors, or is it not too bad? Because Africa's really had reasonable publicity in terms of sustainable growth rates, and there are some good stories around Africa.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yes, there are some good stories, but I think Africa is still on that curve of being able to maximize on these stories. But I think, I mean, capital raising in the last 3-4 years has been quite difficult, especially with the global economic outlook and the credit crisis. So it's not easy, but there is a clear there is a clear alternative now, and Africa being an alternative with these sectors that seem to not just be driving the Africa growth story, but also to be driving the growth story in China and in the Middle East with regards to alternative sources of energy and alternative sources of commodities.